You're listening to the DC Comics Chronicles, where we cover every adventure from the streets of Gotham to the skies of Metropolis and into the depths of Atlantis. With your hosts, Adam and Chris.
Welcome to another episode of the DC Comics Chronicles. As always, I'm your host, Adam. And with me is my co-host, Chris. Chris, how's it going?
I am doing very well tonight, Adam. Happy to be joining you once again, my friend. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. This isn't as impromptu as our last DC show together, because we knew what we were going to talk about was coming, so we kind of planned this in advance. So it's not as impromptu. But I got to tell you, Chris, the last couple of days, well, yeah, 3 days, feels like it's 1989 again. And I got to say, I like it. What we are here to discuss, the sort of the main meat and potatoes of our podcast will be our review breakdown of the full trailer for the Flash film, which debuted just prior to the Super Bowl starting. So that's our main topic. But before that, Warner Brothers and DC Studios, I guess maybe they knew that we were going to do a vidcast tonight. And so before our recording, they dropped casting information for the upcoming 8-episode limited series for The Penguin, which is, of course, the spin-off from the Batman film. Now, what we know about The Penguin is that, as I said, it's 8 episodes, courtesy of Colin Farrell revealing that information. And it starts filming, according, again, to Colin Farrell, February 28th. So
right
as
around
of this
the corner.
recording, 2 weeks from now. We know that, of course, Colin Farrell will star as Oswald Cobblepot, or Oz, a.k.a. the Penguin. And I think it's Christina Milioti, I think it is, as Sophia Falcone. Did I get that right? So we've got additional casting details. And again, all we have right now are actor names. We don't know which characters they're playing, because according to Variety, those details are being kept under wraps. So as much as we wish we could tell you, we can't, because we just don't know. But according to Variety, and confirmed by the actors themselves, because apparently now with the trades, you're better off getting confirmation from the actors themselves as well, because you never know. But according to all parties involved, actor Michael Kelly, actress Sohiri Agdashlo, I don't know if I pronounced that right, and Deirdre O'Connell have all joined the cast of The Penguin, as well as again, these names are, geez, they gave me the tough ones this week. Alum Renzi Felice is also cast in the show. And that actor, the one I just mentioned, was a cast member on The Runaways. I don't know if you remember that series, Chris.
I remember it, but I didn't watch it.
Michael Kelly is interesting because he has a connection to DC past, in the form that he played Steve Lombard in Man of Steel.
That is where I know him from, and I think he's the only one of these 3 actors with whom I am familiar. and
I'm
that is because of Man of Steel. Apparently, he was on House of Cards. I never watched that.
Yeah, so I know him and then the last kid I mentioned from Runaways because I used to watch Runaways, the Marvel show on Hulu. I think the second actress with the name that I botched to high heaven, she may have be the I could be wrong, but they look very similar. She might be, I should really look this up, but she might be the actress from. Remember, she was in X-Men: The Last Stand.
Oh man, I try not to remember too much
But okay,
about
remember
that.
the lady that was giving the cure to Leech, I think it was.
Okay.
She was also in 24. I think that's her because she looks familiar. Anyway, so regardless, I recognize two of the four. Um, it's hard to say are they right for the roles because we don't know what roles they're playing.
Right.
But again, Matt Reeves is involved in this thing, and based on the Batman and his casting record in that, who am I? Who am I to judge? Uh, you know, um, I think I'm sure they'll do well in whatever parts they're playing. If they're keeping them under wraps, I'm guessing they're important pieces to the puzzle. But we'll find out soon enough because, again, February 28th is the start date. So we don't have long to wait, Chris.
You were right about that actress being in X-Men: The Last Stand.
Oh, good. See, I have a half decent memory
You called it.
when it comes to useless comic book movie knowledge. But the important stuff. I can't tell you what I ate yesterday, but that meaningless trivia. There you go. So I was right, and so yeah. So just an interesting. Speaking of trivia, Colin Farrell, of course, stars as the Penguin. And do you know that 20 years ago, as of this recording, he starred in the then just released Daredevil movie
Daredevil.
as Bullseye? And his co-star was somewhat current / soon to be former Batman Ben Affleck, who played Daredevil. So it all it all comes around back to Batman.
Indeed,
And
it does.
Ben Affleck only took that job originally because he thought that was his only chance to play Batman, or something close to Batman. Little did he know that some years down the track he'd get to play Batman himself, and then soon return in the movie that we are, or the trailer for the movie we're going to talk about in a bit here. Now, of course, we'll talk about the Flash. We'll go in depth about the Flash trailer once we take our break. But before our break, Chris, we know that we were getting the Matt Reeves Batverse, as it were, with this Penguin show, presumably in 2024. Then the Batman Part 2 in 2025, October 3rd to be specific. Variety also states that the Arkham Asylum series and the GCPD show are still in the works, so those are presumably coming down the track as well. So we have our Batverse via Matt Reeves that is an Elseworlds under the Elseworlds banner. We also have because with the recently revealed DC Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters slate that James Gunn revealed that we talked about in our last episode, we have The Brave and the Bold, which is the Batman project of the DC shared universe. So there were, and again, there's no point in obsessing over these, but prior to the Flash's trailer debuting, there was a Well, actually, there was a couple scoopers claiming that one led this information with this information and said there's another Batman that's going to cameo at the end of the Flash because apparently they refilmed the certain parts of the Flash to reportedly remove the Wonder Woman cameo and the Henry Cavill cameo. And also, the speculation is that they removed Michael Keaton from the ending of the Flash movie, as well as reportedly Sasha Calle from the end of the movie, because they technically don't want to promise anything that they're unsure of that they're going to deliver, right? So, on top of that, this pooper scooper, I'll call her, because that's what I think of her reporting, said that there is a cameo of another Batman at the end of the Flash, and she said that there was a possibility that this former Batman who appears supposedly at the end of the Flash would then potentially continue on as the Batman of the shared DC universe, aka Damian Wayne's father. She then went on to infer that said Batman that makes this cameo at the end was one of three people. And she posted pictures of Val Kilmer, George Clooney, and Christian Bale. Okay, so, and then two other, again, scoopers.
So we already know of the two actual living Batman actors who are going to be in this movie.
Yes, the two
We
confirmed
know
Batman
the two that are going to be in it.
are Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck.
Right. So this person is saying, out of the other three living actors who have portrayed Batman, one of them is going to be in this movie, but I'm not telling you which one, but it's one of these three. Well, that's not a...
Apparently she knew which one, right? And then, see, two other scoopers who are about equally as reliable, which is to say, not very much, I'll just tell you, posted a GIF of George Clooney. So the inference is, right, if those scoopers are going to follow up her tweet with a GIF of George Clooney, the inference being, right, now correct me if I'm wrong, but potentially in this scenario, 1 + 1 = 2. So if she says one of three former Batman, and she names or she shows pictures of those Batman, and one of them is George Clooney, and then two other scoopers start posting GIFs of George Clooney, right? A plus B leads to C, which equals Clooney, correct? Is my math, would that be logical to assume?
I mean, if we're applying logic to this situation,
yeah, if we're
yes,
applying logic to a mound of cow crap, then that's where it would go. So now everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. George Clooney's going to be the Batman of the DC universe because she put potentially, this person that appears could be so everybody's jumping to the conclusion. 2 days went by, Chris, and poor James Gunn's Twitter was being bombarded with, is it true? Is George Clooney the Batman of the DC universe? And after 2 days, because James Gunn is busy, he has a life, he has work to do, lots of it. Producing this content we're all excited about, that little job, plus finishing up Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. He came on and tweeted and answered the question. Absolutely not. To which a follow-up question was asked. Okay, but is the DCU Batman going to be a former Batman actor? To which James Gunn replied, new actor.
New actor.
Okay. So, could there be a cameo of George Clooney as a fun little reference to Batman history, DC history, DC multiverse history, at the end of The Flash? Absolutely. That part of it, I believe. That part of it, of both parts of that story, that's the part I can believe. That yes, there's a 2 minute, 30-second, whatever cameo featuring George Clooney. Sure, I buy that. The presumption of the idea that potentially this Batman could then George Clooney's Batman could then carry on. Okay, let me play devil's advocate, because everybody knows my feelings on Batman and Robin. Train wreck, turd, scarred me emotionally, etc. All the stuff I've spewed up before. So now, if James Gunn actually came out and announced 3 weeks from now, look, guys, I was being purposely evasive because I didn't want to spoil anything, but now we're ready to announce that yes, George Clooney is going to be a variant, a Batman variant, and he's going to be the DCU Batman, and he's going to be Damian's father. If they announce that tomorrow, what would my reaction be? Well, can't stand Batman and Robin? Fact. George Clooney is a good actor? Fact. Given the right material, could George Clooney play a seasoned, older Batman who developed a Bat family and is the father of Damian Wayne? Yes, he could. And if the scenario presented itself where that was the case, I would go into it with welcoming arms and hope that the material he's given is better, so that he could give a redemptive, solid performance as Bruce Wayne Batman. So I could have been potentially on board with that scenario. It's not happening, so that's fine. Now, the reason why I was kind of skeptical was, to begin with, okay, so if you're going to have an older Batman that is the father of Damian Wayne and has had several Robins and a Bat family, well, why didn't you just leave Michael Keaton in place? Because he was signed to do that. So why, if you're going to change that, why just pick a different Batman? Now, the rationale that I gave myself, if that was true, was, well, and everybody knows I love Michael Keaton. We'll talk about it in a second, how much that is. But my bank account knows because I just spent money. But anyway, my rationale of potentially doing that, hypothetically doing that, would be, well, George Clooney is 9 years Michael Keaton's junior. So if you are going forward with an 8 to 10 year plan and you're using an older established Batman, a 61-year-old Batman makes a little bit more sense than a 71-year-old Batman. You can get slightly more longevity. You know what I mean? So that's how I could rationalize a potential change. But it's not happening. So let's... No. Now, I just want to get your thoughts on, what did you make of all this chaos, and had that been an actuality? If 3 weeks down the line says, James Gunn comes out and says, "Gotcha, I was kidding. He actually is the Batman of this universe," how would you react to all that?
Well, I mean, it's all just, it's hoopla created out of nothing. The person who dropped this rumor has a track record of not being trustworthy and of just pulling things out of thin air that make no sense. But blaming it on sources. Well, so when they are proved to be wrong and they're called on it, they're like, oh, well, it's not that I was wrong. My sources had it incorrect. I didn't see the initial, statement or whatever that was claiming this rumor, because I am blocked by this person probably by good reason, for good
Yeah,
reason.
no, absolutely.
But James Gunn came flat out and said, no, that's not the case. And people are still doubling down on it. And I don't understand why people have the need to not believe someone who's insists that they're telling the truth. Now, if he came out 3 weeks from now and said, I'm just kidding, George Clooney is the new Batman, I would be like, shame on you for lying in the first place. And then I would be like, shame on you for hiring a 61-year-old to play this part when we already have Michael Keaton slash Ben Affleck slash any number of people who could fill that role of a Batman who is aged to the point of having a child. But that's not what they're doing, and he said that's not what they're doing. So they're casting younger. If I have to guess, I'd say probably in the 30 to 35-year range. And they want somebody who can play Batman not just in the next movie, but for the next 10 years, 15 years, or however long they might be making these movies. I mean, how long was Robert Downey Jr. Tony Stark? That was for what, 12 years?
Yeah, I think it was 2008 until 2000 and, oh crap, when was Endgame? 2020,
2019?
2021?
2019, because it was before the pandemic.
Okay, yeah, all right.
But they're looking for somebody to be in this for the long haul, and I don't think someone who is old enough to be Damien's grandfather at this point in time is going to be the call for that.
Yeah, and even folks, like, okay, let's say hypothetically they go in the early 40s with Batman, the new actor. That still gives you could still get, 8 to 13 years out of this particular actor, where he could play prime Batman, and then transition to potentially Batman Beyond, which is a movie that I'd like, but I'll get more into that in our second half. But now, like, look, and I'm somebody that, if the hint that everybody was giving was that it was Christian Bale, I would, I'm ecstatic that we've gotten Michael Keaton back for whatever it ends up being, however long it ends up being, one film, another film, whatever. I didn't expect that I was going to get him back in the first place, so I'm happy that I get to see him. If it's one last time, we go one last hurrah. So if by some, in some multiverse build said, you know what, I miss being Batman, I want to do it again. Would I have been ecstatic? Sure. Because, 47 is still, again, I mean, it's doable. But James Gunn has said that it's a new actor. So for now, I'm gonna take James Gunn at his word. So, Chris, do you think there's a scenario where, because they're using Grant Morrison's run, right? And every image that we see associated with the Brave and the Bold movie is an image of Damian Wayne next to the Batman that is underneath the cowl is Dick Grayson. Because, of course, in the course of Grant Morrison's run, we had, Battle for the Cowl, etc., etc. So, could there be a scenario where, let's say James Gunn hires an actor somewhere in his 40s to play, early 40s to play Bruce Wayne, right? We get a couple of films with him so that we can have, the father-son story, which James Gunn said Brave and the Bold is, right? And then another film after that further establishes the Bat family, like Nightwing and Batgirl and, Tim Drake, etc., etc. And then at some point in the course of this 10-year plan, we actually get a scenario where Bruce, maybe not exactly like Final Crisis, but Bruce is taken off the board in some way, temporarily, and Nightwing takes over as Batman. Like, could you see that as a possibility?
Oh yeah, it's something that I could see as a possibility, and it's something that I would love to see.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of the run in the comics when Bruce was out of the picture and Dick took over. I really liked the the dynamic between Dick and Damien. It was more of a big brother little brother dynamic than a father son dynamic,
Right.
which lends itself, I think, to some really interesting themes that you can play on. And it was a little more humorous too, because Dick has a sense of humor where Bruce is a lot more dark and serious and brooding. So I think the team up of Dick and Damien is really fun, and I enjoyed that era of the comics. We know that's not the route they're going in this movie because James
At
Gunn
least this
specifically
first movie,
said
yeah.
it's a father son story.
Right.
So that's what we're getting. But yeah, man, I hope that the introduction of Damien doesn't take Dick and Tim and possibly even Jason off the board. I hope that they have all been Robin
Well,
already, and that Damien
well,
is the fourth one.
well. I mean, Peter Safran did say other members of the Bat family will appear in
Right.
this film. So,
Sure.
I mean, unless he's, being, double-handed and really means Anne Harriet, I think we're we're going to see at the very least Nightwing in this thing. But so I do think that potentially there is a scenario where Dick Grayson could take over, but at least for a couple of films in this new DCU, you'd need Bruce Wayne,
Yeah.
and so and so that's what it is. But and in terms of look, there are there are I get frustrated when I see people, fans, people with a monicum of clout within the fan community uh, say, well, why is everybody worried about who's going to be cast as the DCU Batman? We have the Batman, and we should celebrate that that's here and enjoy that. And look, I respect that there are people that prefer Batman on his own and in a much darker setting. I get that. That's great. I love the Batman. I love what Matt Reeves did there. I am super excited for the Penguin, and I will be there opening weekend for the Batman Part 2 and potentially Part 3. But when I go to the comic store, or now because my comic store closed down, so I've had to get them. I found a store that actually, like, I can order them online and they come right to my house. So it's great. Fantastic. I'm getting even lazier, which is good. But when I go to the comic store, the beauty of the comic stores, I can pick up something like this. You see that? Detective Comics. Very dark, very gritty, very noir, right? And then I could pick something up like Batman, or Justice League, which features a Batman that is more superheroic, right? My type of leaning as a Batman fan is I like both versions of Batman.
Yep.
So yes, I am curious who they're going to cast as the DCU Batman. It's a very intriguing topic to me. I hope that in this version,
Apparently, you're not a real Batman fan though. If you can't only get behind the Matt Reeves universe and not care about the other incarnations.
So supposedly, but I want to see him fight and the Bat Family fight. Slightly more fantastical villains. Maybe a Clayface. Maybe a Man Bat. Maybe.
I loved seeing Batman fight parademons. That was awesome.
Yeah, Killer Croc, whatever. But and it'd be really cool, and we have proof of this, which we'll get into in a minute. It'd be really cool to differentiate between the two cinematic Batmans by having Matt Reeves Robert Pattinson's version of Batman, where the all black tactical batsuit, and potentially the DCU Batman, wear a blue and gray suit, suited costume. That'd be really cool. Why? Because that's part of Batman's history. Like, there's this misconception that the audience only like based on box office, the audience only likes dark, serious solo Batman. Really? Then if that's the case, and I know it was a different time period, how do you explain the fact that Batman 66 was, I'm going to use the phrase, a global phenomenon? And it was, Chris, and I'm not just being, poking fun at the bear. It was because that series' popularity saved the Batman comic book from cancellation. So yes, it was a different time. So let's fast forward a couple of decades. How do you explain that Batman Forever was the number 2 grossing film in North America of 1995? Robin was in that. It was lighter than Batman Returns and Batman 89. And yet, it had a mini resurgence of Batmania. It wasn't on the level of 89, but it was, pretty cool. Pretty up there.
Oh man,
right?
I had all the character posters on my wall in my bedroom.
So Chris, my question is, how do you explain this? How do you explain that Batman the Animated Series is one of the quintessential iterations of the character period? Robin was in that. Nightwing was in that. He eventually teamed up with Superman because that morphed into the Justice League, universe. How do you explain that? Here's another one. Let's go a little bit more lighter. And it took me a while to come around to this one, but I love it now. Batman Brave and the Bold, the animated iteration. People love that show. Batman's wearing blue and gray. He jokes. He sings with Aquaman, for God's sake. How do you explain it? Oh, what's the excuse? It's animated, so that it doesn't count? Like, I've always contended that the box office shortcomings, that's being nice. The utter failure that was Batman and Robin was not because Robin and Batgirl was in there. It's because it was rushed, had a paper-thin story, and was only concerned with itself of selling toys. That's why it suffered.
Yeah, I don't think Alicia Silverstone and Chris O'Donnell kept people from going to the movies.
Right, and BVS and Justice League, it wasn't because he was teaming up with Superman and Wonder Woman and, eventually Flash and Cyborg and it wasn't because he was standing next to them that those movies didn't work. It was, the conceit, the direction of that story turned a portion of the audience off. It's got nothing to do with the fact that Batman was in a universe that other heroes existed. I don't buy that narrative. And you know what? The Flash is kind of a little bit of a test of that. But when me as a Batman fan, and I'll get your thoughts on it, when I see this, that we have the dark detective-driven story of Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson, but we're also going to get superhero Batman back, and he's going to be a little bit more heroic, probably a little bit lighter. In fact, my theory, Chris, and you can chime in, once you give your take on all this, but my theory is, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say the Brave and the Bold's tone is going to be a cross between Batman '89 and Batman Forever. Somewhere in that, milieu of sort of, that's going to be the kind of concoction that we get with Batman.
Well, I mean, just take the name, The Brave and the Bold, the Brave and the Bold comic, or I mean, animated series that shared the same name was fun. It was adventurous. It told stories that that pulled you in. You like to see Batman teaming up with somebody else. In this case, in this movie, it's going to be Robin and the rest of the Bat family. So, I mean, just look at the source material that it's taking its name from. I think it's going to be lighter and fun, but it'll fit within the I'm sure the serious story, overarching story being told in the DCU.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to break out into a song with Aquaman or bobbling his head around like George Clooney 3/4 of the movie. But my thing is, we're going to have the dark and detective-driven Batman. That's not going anywhere. But audiences are also going to have the option of seeing superhero Batman. And if one doesn't suit your taste, that's cool. The other one will. But I don't think there's we can't tell fans, oh, don't be excited for this. Now look, do I clap back at at the Snyder Cultists? Yeah, but the only reason I do that is because they post some dumb shit on the internet. I mean, you've seen it. That's the stuff I clap back at. But for somebody that enjoys Snyder's DCU, enjoy it. Just be a rational fan about it. That's the difference. I'll never tell anybody, oh, don't watch that. Don't be excited for that. Go ahead. Throw a party. Have your friends over. Watch all three back to back to back. Just don't do the nonsense that the crazier sect of the fandom does. That's all. That's where I get. But you and I on the show will never say, oh, don't watch that. So, yeah. So that's my take on that. And anything else you want to
add? Just everybody stop bombarding James Gunn with your crazy theories and questions. Like, the man is just getting to work now, and I think it's all going to piece together nicely, and I think that and trust him when he tells you something flat out. People are saying, like, when he flat out came out and said, like, no, we're casting somebody new, they're like, oh, well, of course he would say that. Like, no, he's saying that because it's the truth. Just believe him.
So far he hasn't lied, so
far.
Take him at his word. But yeah, as we get to know more about all these projects, we'll bring it to you. And when the new Batman is eventually cast, we'll share our thoughts on that too. But we're going to take a quick break, and on the other side, we'll share our thoughts with the very popular, according to metrics, Flash trailer. So stay tuned. Quickly go grab a drink if you need one. We will be right back.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows, which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back. And as promised, it's time to discuss the long-awaited, long-speculated full trailer for The Flash. So, Chris, I'm going to throw it over to you first. What's your overall take? What stands out?
Okay.
What do you want to talk about specifically?
All right. Based just on the things that we have known from rumors, leaks, actual release, my hype level for this movie was already pretty high.
Yep.
After seeing this trailer, it is through the roof. I was already way up there, but now based on the 3 minutes, the 2 minutes and 57 seconds that they've given us, the next 4 months can't go by quickly enough. I can't wait for this movie.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That was an amazing trailer. One of the things I think it did well was it presented all the other awesome characters we're getting. You know, Supergirl, two Batman, but at its heart, the focus of that trailer remained a Flash film.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people were worried, oh, is this going to be, you know, a Batman film featuring the Flash, you know, guest starring the Flash or whatever. But this was very Flash centric, and that hits you right away when you see, you know, Barry talking about going back to, or you know, we hear the Michael Keaton voiceover. Why are you fighting so hard to save this universe? And he's like, because this is the one my mother lives on, and they, you know, they're showing shots of him as a child walking in on his mother seemingly dying on the floor, right, and then, you know, taking off. So you get that emotionally charged hit right at the beginning of the trailer, you know, and clearly he's talking to, you know, Ben Affleck's Bruce, saying, "I can go back and fix things," to which Ben Affleck's Bruce says, "Yeah, but you can also go back and destroy everything," right? And that makes, I like that they're carrying over the mentor vibe between Bruce and Barry from Justice League, because that was one of the things I really liked from the Justice League movie.
Yeah, you definitely believe that Barry would go to Bruce with this like plan or this question that he has about whether or not he can or should do this.
Yeah. There's also a really cool sequence throughout the trailer that I think is from the beginning of the film, where you see Batman on the Bat Cycle, and you know, he's clearly working with Flash to stop some villain / catastrophe. I don't think that's later on in the film. I think that's, you know, the opening salvo of the film probably. We also get the first meeting of the two Barrys.
Yep.
Which is pretty funny because
You stole my face.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. And the technology, whatever they're using to pull that off, you know, both of them, because I think that it's been said that they're using a certain type of technology. It looked really good.
The several times that they showed both Barrys together in the trailer, like side by side in the same frame, it looked really good.
Right. Yeah. And throughout all this, you know, there's a voiceover of Barry talking about, you know, going back and what those changes could be, different versions of people, et cetera, right? And then we get the shot of Wayne Manor, right? And so we think, oh my God, we're going to get Batman. They're going to show him. And then it cuts to the message. Remember from Man of Steel, the message of Zod, you know, we're not alone. It cuts to that. And then we see a bunch of clips from the, what's it called? The Black Zero event. Is that what it was called from Man of Steel?
I think so.
Right. And so the idea proposed by the trailer is that when Barry goes back to save his mother, he creates a timeline where there are no metahumans.
Right.
And consequently, there's nobody to stop General Zod from all the shenanigans he pulled off in Man of Steel. And then we hear... So what was your take on the whole, you know, altered version of the Black Zero event, like the stuff that we saw? It was cool to see Michael Shannon again, for sure.
For sure. So up until last week, I didn't know that he was in this movie.
Okay.
And I was reading an article on superhero hype, and they said something about him returning as Zod, and I commented, and I was like, "Are you sure? Is this like confirmed?" And then only a few days later, we get it in the trailer. That's not something I was expecting, but I think it's an awesome callback because that's where this even if this is a reset button on the universe, Man of Steel is where the universe began. Zod was the first big bad of this universe. So if you're going back in time and you're going to show the ramifications of Barry's actions throughout the timeline of the DC universe, Zod's appearance is one of the touchstone events of that universe.
Yeah.
So I think it makes all the sense in the world to tie it in that way, and I'm really glad they decided to take that route.
It's very much coming full circle with when, how it started, right? Before we end it or alter it or whatever it's going to end up causing. Before George Clooney shows up at the very end, we're gonna bring it back to Man of Steel. Then we see a shot of a frail, depowered superhero in captivity.
Yep.
Which is called back to a Flashpoint comic series, but
Yeah,
instead of Superman, they've swapped out.
Exactly. Yeah. Just in case any of our listeners aren't familiar with what we're talking about, this borrows some bits and pieces here and there from the Flashpoint comic book series, which I was really into comics when that series came out. So I loved that series. I have the issues sitting right over here, actually, in my boxes. But I loved the comic book series, and I loved the DC animated movie, The Flashpoint Paradox. That was really good too.
It was really, really good. Yeah, for sure. So we see the frail superhero, and then we finally get, Barry's in the Batcave, flips a switch, and then you hear, because you hear the voiceover from Barry saying, "There's nobody to save us," and then you hear Michael Keaton's voiceover saying, "Need some help," and you see this long panning shot of the Batcave, which has been renovated because there's a lot of additions from the last time we saw it.
Yeah.
And you see the Batmobile under a tarp, and then we have the shot of from behind the cowl of Keaton, and then we finally see him walk towards the camera, and you have both Barrys like, "Oh my God," like they're hyperventilating. They're like, "Oh my God, you're," and then he's like, "You are," and then Keaton stops. He's like, "Yeah." And there's a pause, and he's like, "I'm Batman," and that's coupled with the reworked Elfman theme kicking in before he even swooped down and started kicking ass.
Right. When
I
you
had
hear
lost my shit at that point.
when you hear that piano version of Danny Elfman's Batman theme play as he's walking into the shot, you're right. That almost sent chills through me. It took me right back to being in the theater when I saw the original in 1989. It plays on my emotions, it plays on my nostalgia, and it works.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely worked.
I'm so glad we got a shot in the trailer of the Flash ring opening up.
Yeah.
So it looks like we're going to be getting that super cool technology in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Which was given to him by, of course, the Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne.
Right.
Just to clarify. So then, obviously, we see a shot of the rescue of Supergirl, if you will. And so Batman and Barry go to that compound, and they're seemingly caught red-handed. It's very much almost straight out of the Flashpoint comic.
So this is the scenes in the trailer when Batman's swooping in and taking out the guards. It looks like.
Yeah.
So you think that's when they're rescuing Kara? Okay, yeah, probably.
Yeah, and then the daylight scene when they're out in the open, and Barry's caught by those guys with the guns, those guards. And it's like, Batman wants to play, and then Batman's got his hand up, and he's like, "We try not to die." And then he puts his hand down, and Supergirl's hovering, and she just deflects all the bullets, swoops down, and just rips through that security force, and she saves Michael Keaton's Batman from getting shot in a great slow-mo shot, where she blocks the bullet, and then and knocks the guy
Yeah.
in the face.
And
And
don't we
then
see a shot of her getting one in on Zod really
so it's
quickly?
all interspersed, right? And then with all that, we also see a shot of the Batwing kind of conducting the electricity, because the theory is, and we see both Barrys getting hit by the lightning. So my theory is one Barry is transferring some power to the other Barry, so they both have. So now we have both speedsters going, because we see that in the trailer where
Yeah.
they run opposite sides of each other and they touch boots to kind of give each other like that extra jolt to go. That was cool.
And the Barry on the left is wearing like Batman boots with a flash lightning bolt like spray painted on it.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
one has the blue lightning from like the Snyder films, and one has the more comic accurate, yellow lightning. One is doing a tornado, he's creating a tornado, which is cool. I believe that's regular Earthberry, like normal Earthberry. And we also see Supergirl in costume, but she's kind of levitating upwards, and she seems to be holding somebody. I think that was one of the berries.
I think so.
And so then we get a shot back at Wayne Manor where and you hear the voiceover of Barry saying, "That's not Clark," and she goes, "My name's Kara," and then he's like, "We're Barry," and then, which was pretty funny. Then you get the title card, and what I'm assuming is the rebuilt Batwing is flying, and Supergirl in costume flies next to it, and the Flashpoint Barry is holding up the cell phone taking a video, and our Barry is like, "Barry, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, our kids are going to want to see this." And then she, sonic booms in flight and forward, and that's how the trailer ends.
That was a cool ending to the trailer. It left it on an upbeat note, because you can see parts of this movie are going to be a downer.
Of course, which is Flashpoint, the storyline. But yeah, I like how you juxtapose that with there's darkness, but there's also, it's really bright, really colorful. Like Supergirl's colors, the blues and the reds really popped, right? And that, you're right, that was a very strong way to end the trailer. And for a brief second, we see Batman in daylight, which normally you think we haven't seen Michael Keaton's Batman in daylight, but I'm like, oh shit, it works. Still works. He still looks badass. You can put him in the brightest, of bright days, and he still looks awesome.
Well, and I think we have a shot of him in the blue and gray suit during the daytime.
Well, I think that was Affleck.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, because if you look at there's a still, somebody screen grabbed it, and the ears are Affleck sized. That's how you can tell the difference. That the ears of the logo, and it's Affleck logo. But funny you mentioned.
I don't care who's wearing it. Give me a blue and gray suit.
First of all, let me just say, before we continue to gush over Batman, which is what they presented Sasha Calle's Supergirl phenomenally in this.
Yeah.
I mean, she comes off as an absolute badass, and I can't wait to see more of her.
Yeah.
And who knows if this movie does exceptionally well, maybe she carries over as the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow in some way. We'll have to wait and see. But in the TV spot during the game, there was a shot of footage from Batman's armory.
Yeah.
And there's like 6 to 8 different Batman costumes.
Yep.
One is like a year one costume with the old school 39 years, the ones that are slightly curved. One is like an underwater armor, like that he uses for under armor. One is like kind of like the Nightmare Batman suit / Gotham by Gaslight.
Yeah, with the goggles.
Yeah. And the little hood at the back. And then there was the one, Chris, it was blue and gray, had the yellow oval, and it had lenses.
Sign me up.
Look, I don't know if we're going to see that in action. Probably not. But just knowing that he had it and that he has it is gold to me. I think showing Affleck in a bluer/gray suit and hinting at Keaton having one is preparing us for the Brave and the Bold Batman having a blue and gray suit.
Oh
That's just
man,
my theory. That's just my theory.
that'd be so cool.
So I love. There's one thing I want to ask you before we close tonight. But before we do that, is there anything specifically on the trailer that you want to mention that we didn't yet?
You know what's funny? I sometimes forget that not everyone is as big of a nerd as I am. So at work on Monday, my boss and I were talking about the Super Bowl and all the commercials and stuff like that. And one of my coworkers said that he didn't see the game or any of the commercials, and I just casually said, "Oh, well, did you see Michael Keaton Batman in the Flash trailer?" And he looked at me with wide eyes, and he was like, "What did you just say?" And I was like, "Oh, so A, you haven't seen the trailer, and B, I just spoiled it for you because you don't follow all the sites, the gossip sites that I follow, and
Yeah,
reading Twitter and Facebook and stuff all day." So he sat there. As soon as I said that to him, he pulled out his phone and he watched it twice, and he was amazed. He was, and this, I don't consider him as like into the source material as
yeah.
people
He's
like
not
you
one
and
of
I
us.
are.
He's more of a casual.
Yeah, but he was really excited by this trailer, so it was cool for me to see that excitement from someone else who's not as big of a fan as I am. So that leaves me very hopeful and positive about the movie in general, but really about this trailer. I think they knocked it out of the park with this one.
Well, this is the. I don't know if you. I read this on the Wrap today that this is the most watched Super Bowl advertised trailer
Wow,
since 2018.
wow,
So that's 5 years. The
that's
most
pretty big.
watched. That's pretty huge. Um, and for all those people that said, but remember back in the day, Chris, oh, nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to care about Michael Keaton coming back. Really?
It's been 30 years, man. The time has come.
I think the hoopla over this trailer is telling a different story, my friends.
Yeah,
So I'm going to look. It's hard to rate a trailer. It's very difficult. If I had
sure.
to, I'm going to give it an 8.
Uh, geez. I hadn't even thought about a ranking for a trailer. But you know what? Honestly, I'm putting this at a 9. I was
Yeah.
already hyped, and this
Oh, you do
managed.
a number. Okay, I did letter, but yeah, okay.
Oh, I thought
Same
you
thing.
said 8.
No, I said 8, but anyway,
Oh
whatever.
yeah, A. I'll give it an A also.
Five
For
batarangs out of 5. How about that? There we go.
yeah. This if we're doing letter grade for sure, this is an A
Okay,
for me
all right,
because
okay,
I was already up here for hype level, but the trailer has raised it.
okay, all right, cool, cool.
Yeah,
Um, all right, now, Chris, here's my question. We're already seeing people clamoring for Michael Keaton's Batman and Sasha Calle's Supergirl, right?
okay.
If that continues to carry over through to the film and translates into box office, now I'm not going to say the B word, but well, okay, I will say it. If this thing makes between 750 to $1 billion, so 750 million to $1 billion, and at the end of the movie, and everybody's talking online about Michael Keaton's Batman, Sasha Calle's Supergirl, whether it's in the main universe or in or Elseworlds projects, if you were Peter Safran and James Gunn, how do you not explore further utilizing these two?
Well, that's one of the benefits of having the Elseworlds moniker, right? And anything under that banner, you can tinker and you can play and you can have things that exist in their own little corner of the universe.
Yeah. I mean, Sasha Calle could potentially be used again in Superman as a Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. That's conceivable. In terms of Michael Keaton, I have a feeling, just hear me out. This is just my. If this thing does phenomenal business, you're going to hear about a Batman Beyond movie. I know that was taken off the table right now, because remember that was in development before James Gunn came on board. But if this thing does big business and people are clamoring for more Michael Keaton, they're going to pull the trigger. because we're going to get Batman Beyond eventually.
May as well do it while Michael Keaton's still around.
Do it with the guy that everyone will probably be clamoring for. So it wouldn't shock me. And if you announce, 2 or 3 weeks, unless look, if this thing does, here's a joke. I'm not proclaiming this, but if this thing did Avatar 2 numbers, then you announce it the Monday morning. But provided that it does not Avatar 2 numbers, but really, really well, 3-4 weeks later, imagine this announcement: Batman Beyond, starring, or a version of Batman Beyond starring Michael Keaton, Michelle Pfeiffer, produced by Tim Burton. Tell me the internet doesn't go and lose their mind.
I mean, that already has got dollar signs flashing in executives' eyes, I think.
That's all I'm saying. If this does that well, there's no way that I think James Gunn and Peter Safran are going to discard Sasha Calle or Michael Keaton. In some capacity, they'll find a way to use it.
Look, Peter Safran is a businessman, right? He's going to follow the
He's the money guy. He's going to say, James, we got to use these guys.
Right. You're the creative. You figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Remember that script Christina Hodson was writing for Batman Beyond? Yeah, dust it off and call Michael. But yeah.
They apparently like her a lot, James Gunn is heaping a lot of praise on this movie, and
that's the other thing. He loves it.
Yeah, and so they've kept Christina around. She's part of the writers' room for the new DCU. He sounds like he really has great feelings about this movie, and he's not out there saying the same things about Shazam too. So I don't just think it's like company speak, or you know what I'm saying. Like, I think he really believes.
And look, he had nothing to do with the production of this movie.
Right.
So like, it doesn't. Look, if these next crop of DC Universe movies before Superman Legacy kicks in, if they all fail hypothetically, it's no skin off James Gunn's back. He didn't produce any of them, right? So he doesn't have the automatic necessity to praise something because it's something he worked on. He's coming in and saying, yeah, this thing's fantastic. Right?
Yeah. So
that's encouraging. So who knows what the future holds for Michael Keaton and Sasha Calle? That'll depend on the film's success. But based on this trailer, I'm even more excited for this than I was before I saw the trailer. And that's saying something, because I've been on the hype train for this movie since day one. So bring it on. And if you want to know how much I love Michael Keaton, I just pre-ordered my first hot toy of the re-released Michael Keaton Batman. So there you go. So, but that's it. That's our thoughts on the trailer. Can't wait for whatever else they're going to show us going forward in the lead up to this movie. And as more stuff comes out and as castings are revealed, etc., Chris and I, Donnie and I, all three of us will cover this extensively, so stay tuned. And in the meantime, you want to talk Flash or Batfleck or Batkeen with us, you can on social media. Chris, where do they track you down?
So I am on Twitter at Chris N. Harrelson, or you can search for Commodore Schmidlap. I'm also on Facebook, and Adam will post about this episode in the Facebook group. By the time he does that, I should be off my temporary Facebook ban, so I'll see you there.
Well, I don't know what you did, but cool.
I said something sarcastic.
Who'd you piss off, Chris? It's not Elon Musk. We'll talk about it after the show. Yeah, but
I'm being sarcastic about something, and it thought I was like inciting an argument. I don't know.
I've had that on Twitter, but
whatever.
It's funny. I got put in Twitter jail for something far more tame than I've said to other people, but I digress. Whatever, it is what it is. Anyway, so Chris could be.
That's where I'll be.
Yeah, I can be found on Twitter at Adam_LeafsFan. We have a Twitter page for the Vidcast Network at MMNPDC. We have a Facebook group, which the link is in the description below. Click that. I will add you and we can continue the conversation there. And I know this was talking about the Flash trailer, but we went pretty Batman heavy tonight. So remember that Michael Keaton's Batman is forever. From the first time he proclaimed, "I'm Batman," to the last. So long, everybody.